Hello there, viewers, and welcome to Cartoon Gateway. I'm your host, David Hollander. Here's a little known fact about me. Several Christmases back, I caught a burglar in my home stealing my family's advent calendar. That was when I lost faith in the justice system, all that crime, and I only got 25 days. It's that time of year, unless this is behind schedule again. Yeah, seriously, do you know when I intended to release this? Holiday season 2024. Except I kept getting suggestions from friends and family. And by the time I watched most of them, it was December 13th and I had 2 other episodes in the pipeline. So yeah, large chunks of this script are being written in December of 2024. Greetings, David of December 2025. What's it like in the future? Bleak, I bet. As David from the future, I would think I was right to hedge my bets. But that time of year means the holiday season. You know, Christmas and associates. And what is this show if not my gift to everyone else? It certainly isn't a form of income. Christmas movies, holiday specials, you know them, and if you're seriously still here, I bet you love them. So I figure, what better way to bring in the holiday season than to give out some holiday-themed animated recommended viewing? Until the day I can psychically send positive affirmations to everyone who deserves it, this'll do. Actually, I can psychically send negative affirmations to everyone who deserves it though, so if you've been hearing a voice in your head saying bad things about you, you didn't hear it from me because you don't deserve it. Incidentally, my internal monologue has been loud lately. If you want to know what to expect before going into this, I'm going to be covering various animated works that I think make for good holiday viewing. For the sake of staying on theme, it's all going to be holiday movies and the like. I like watching Puss in Boots: The Last Wish around this time of year, but I wouldn't recommend that as holiday viewing. Nah, you're finding festive stuff here, which is to say, mostly Christmas stuff. I'll do my best to sprinkle in Hanukkah and Kwanzaa for what it's worth, but it really shouldn't be that surprising that the majority of animated works about this time of year are Christmas themed. Don't even bother asking for New Year's. Some ground rules. The only stuff I'm recommending is overtly holiday themed or about the holiday in question, which means no episodes or movies that are just set around the holiday. You also won't find Nightmare Before Christmas anywhere in this little rundown. Partly because I'd be stating the obvious, and partly because it's more of a Halloween thing. I mean, you could feasibly watch this either on Christmas or Halloween, and I'm not gonna seriously argue with you, but Henry Selick directed the movie. The guy says he considers it a Halloween movie, first and foremost, and that's the closest we'll get to word of God on the matter, so hey ho. And furthermore, ho-ho. That also means I'm going to try to avoid some of the obvious suspects for this kind of thing, which means no How the Grinch Stole Christmas derivatives, or any of the Rankin and Bass specials like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. If you seriously needed me to tell you that those are good, you should go back to dazzling your Eurasian friends with your wonderful personality, I bet. Hi, David from the current year again. I have no idea what that joke means, and I suspect I didn't know when I wrote it either, so your guess is as good as mine. But yes, you did hear right. I'm including Christmas specials, which means that I'm looking at not just animated movies, but dedicated holiday episodes of specific cartoons and other animated TV shows, just to shake things up, you know? I'll avoid outright spoilers as I go because I do still want people to watch these things on their own. One last point, I've long purported that animation isn't just kid stuff. It's a medium for everyone. Lots of more adult-oriented cartoons have holiday episodes, and when the stars align, those can be really good. I still wouldn't recommend you show your kids those shows, but I still want to do a little justice to them. So here's the deal. I'm going to cover everything I'd consider family viewing first, and that'll be the bulk of the episode. Anything I'd consider adults only or unsuitable for younger children, or just not for general audiences, I'll do in a special segment afterwards, just in case a family is watching this together and you gotta put the kids to bed, stockings hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there, which is fun if you celebrate Christmas and slightly terrifying if you don't. We'll start with the Christmas specials and end on the Christmas movies, just for a sense of escalation. So without further mucking about, this is Cartoon Gateway's recommended animated holiday viewing. Up first on my recommendations is something incredibly niche but still worth watching, the first Christmas episode of Regular Show, in which Mordecai and Rigby have to destroy a magic Christmas present that can give anyone anything they want, to keep it from an evil elf who wants the destruction of all things Christmas. Honestly, the best part of this is how this is a very Christmassy plot, but it's still Regular Show. So we get a mix of pop culture references, an inordinate amount of peril and use of guns, and while somehow remaining kid-friendly and generally having a rockin' soundtrack. That's about all I can say without spoiling this one outright. Just watch it for yourself if you're into Regular Show. I grew up with it and I can't recommend it enough. Moving on, let's look at a show I did a whole episode on, DuckTales, the 2017 one, which contains 2 such Christmas recommendations, first of which, Last Christmas. Now, the first season of the show didn't have a proper Christmas episode about Christmas, whereas this season 2 episode is as overtly Christmas as you can get, which is funny considering Scrooge McDuck's storied hatred of Santa Claus. Last Christmas is about how, despite the fact that Scrooge dislikes Santa, he secretly really likes Christmas as a holiday and celebrates in secret every year with the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and so on. But while Scrooge travels through time to nostalgic Christmas moments, Dewey manages to hitch a ride to the past in an effort to spend Christmas with his mom, Della, who he's never met in the present. But even in the past, Della is missing, so Dewey has to team up with a young version of his Uncle Donald to find her. First stroke of genius, making the Ghost of Christmas Past look like Jiminy Cricket. That's just funny. Second stroke of genius was casting the late Russie Taylor as the young Donald Duck. She was the original voice actor for Huey, Dewey, and Louie in the 80s on the grounds that she could sound exactly like a young Donald Duck, which is what she's doing here anyway. It's a fun time travel story which connects its major A plot and B plot really well, though I do think that while it is a good DuckTales Christmas episode, it makes a better DuckTales episode than a Christmas episode, if that makes any sense. A lot of its good qualities come from assumed knowledge of the show, like Della and various other cameos. If you want a DuckTales episode that's more of a classic Christmas story that doesn't need much context, you'd need season 3's episode How Santa Stole Christmas. As is well documented, Scrooge has some major beef, or as we say around the holidays, deer jerky, with Santa Claus. So for the show's final season, they gave us a Christmas episode which finally explains where that comes from, when Santa shows up on the doorstep of McDuck Manor with a broken leg on Christmas Eve, asking his old friend Scrooge to deliver presents this year. It turns out that Santa and Scrooge used to be business partners, pretty much starting the tradition of Santa giving things away on Christmas, but had a falling out over things I will not spoil. Like last Christmas, this is a cozy episode which handles the themes of the holiday really well. Plus it does the usual DuckTales thing of taking a myth or a bit of folklore and putting their own twist on it. I think this one works better on its own than last Christmas did, even if it benefits from the season's long feud between Santa and Scrooge. Move on to a show that Disney themselves forgot about, Pen Zero, Part-Time Hero. I always had a soft spot for this show, nitpicks and all. And the show itself has a really good Christmas episode, North Pole Down. Since I'm guessing most people haven't heard of the show, our main character, Pen here, is a part-time hero who gets zapped in places of heroes throughout the multiverse to do their jobs for them. In this episode, it's his first Christmas without his parents, and he's temporarily left with no way to contact them. Pen doesn't want to think about the holidays, which sucks for him because he gets zapped into being Santa to save Christmas itself. I think this episode's got a really strong core to it. I imagine anyone who's spent the holidays away from their family can strongly empathize with Pen's dilemma. More to the point, I recommend this episode because it makes a surprisingly good introduction to the series itself. It was straight up the first episode of the show aired as a preview, and yeah, it's both a fun introduction to this underrated gem and a heartfelt Christmas episode. And now I spent so long on these three that I need to keep this episode a reasonable length, so here's a good speed round of a bunch of holiday specials I didn't have much to say about, but recommend anyway. Adventure Time's Holly Jolly Secrets gets a mention simply for changing the course of the entire show. Probably the most important episode of Adventure Time, if you can believe that. The Amazing World of Gumball episode, Christmas, is a delightfully fun story, which in typical Gumball fashion blends a little bit of cynicism with surprisingly whimsical humor. Captain Underpants, Mega Blissmas, was a fun time for fans of the Captain Underpants TV show, and I'm only bringing it up here because when else on this show am I going to be able to acknowledge that there was a Captain Underpants cartoon I would have killed for this growing up? The Fairly Odd Parents' Christmas Every Day is probably the funniest single episode on this list, and is a good Christmas story on top of it. And there really isn't much more to say than it's really funny. And SpongeBob's first Christmas special is rockin'. You know it, I know it, the plant knows it. Moving on. On the younger side, no idea if kids nowadays know much about Handy Manny or Special Agent Oso, but both shows had holiday episodes which notably featured and acknowledged Kwanzaa and Hanukkah, which I don't remember most shows I watched growing up ever doing. So maybe there's something interesting worth looking into. They're both harmless enough either way. I didn't bring up Handy Manny in my episode about pre-K cartoons, did I? I forget why. Probably stuck in the bin with Wild Kratts and all the other shows I should mention more. Or maybe it's because I spent so long talking about another tradesman in that episode, I don't know. Oh, speaking of that notable tradesman, of course Bob the Builder had a great holiday movie, A Christmas to Remember, which is sweet, a cozy little watch just like the entire show, and it features Elton John. Really, what more do you need? A back rub? Okay, but I wouldn't turn my back on Spud if I were you. Since I've sped through the Christmas episodes, let's move on to the different holidays. I'll be honest, I intended to do separate segments for Kwanzaa and Hanukkah, just to be fair, but wouldn't you know it, these two holidays didn't have much media presence, so I could find barely anything for either of them separately, so they share a background slide. One of the first Hanukkah specials ever made for children's television happens to be the Rugrats Hanukkah special, in which the Rugrats learn about the history of Hanukkah and imagine themselves in the story, supplemented by a story in the present day, of course. I found this quite enjoyable, and it also happens to be one of the few Rugrats episodes I remember watching as a kid. For real though, does anyone else find it weird that the only competition SpongeBob had on Nickelodeon for ages was Rugrats? 90s kids, what did you see in this show? Because I remember being more put off by the milk in the intro than enjoying the show. Whatever, I'm in no place to criticize. My use of milk is far more sinister, and this episode was quite good anyways, and the fact that the show's generally not my speed, but I recommend this anyway, should tell you all you need to know. The only other shows I could find that had dedicated Hanukkah specials were American Dad and, oddly enough, Camp, neither of which I will talk about here because 1, they're both not cartoons I'd show to the youngest children, and 2, because Camp is almost impossible to find at time of writing. You can find it if you try hard enough, but no one is doing that much just for the Hanukkah special of Camp. And now that we've gotten Hanukkah out of the way, let's move on to the next big holiday of the season, Kwanzaa. I see no problem with this if you don't. Kwanzaa, the holiday which has the distinction of being the only major holiday of the year that I have little to no cultural context for. And by Kris Kringle's unpaid alimony, was it a struggle to find any dedicated Kwanzaa movies, let alone animated ones? And honestly, if you celebrate Kwanzaa, you probably already know what you'd watch in the realms of movies and such, so you don't need me telling you what to watch. I don't celebrate the holiday and possess no significant understanding of it. Be that as it may, I did my due diligence to include all 3 major holidays around this time of year, so I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention what I was able to find, okay? Don't worry, it's brief. The Proud Family episode 7 Days of Kwanzaa was the only Kwanzaa special that I could find in the realms of animation. I thought Hanukkah had it bad, though maybe Kwanzaa should count itself lucky that it doesn't have an Adam Sandler movie all about it. The episode is about the titular family around the holiday season, after Penny invites a homeless family to celebrate Christmas with them, much to Oscar's annoyance. But this family doesn't celebrate Christmas, they celebrate Kwanzaa, and wind up celebrating with the Proud Family, sticking around a bit longer than Penny or Oscar initially assumed. The episode started slow, but wound up super sweet and surprisingly out of pocket, and I'm not sure if that's down to the show itself or the subject matter. Honestly, I think this episode does a better job selling me on the show I just watched than Rugrats' holiday special did. I was still a Nick Jr. kid when Proud Family was airing, so the show kind of passed me by, but I think I've let this episode of Proud Family enjoy her. I don't know what to do with this information. Aside from the Proud Family, I've yet to find another legitimate Kwanzaa special, at least a cartoon one, and even the Proud Family episode took about half of the runtime to get to Kwanzaa stuff. I found myself mostly limited to Kwanzaa segments and broader holiday episodes, such as in that Handy Manny episode I mentioned earlier, and the Futurama Holiday Spectacular, which until recently was the lowest rated episode of Futurama on IMDb. But I suppose with that matter settled, we should move on to the movies, right? Could only really find Christmas ones, so this should be a breeze. What could possibly stop us now? Well, to start with, Marley was dead. Yes. I too can quote the sophisticated Charles Dickens. I am upper crust. What better movie to start our Christmas movies list than with A Christmas Carol, the classic ghost story of Christmas, the patron saint of, oh, our kids were too young when we showed them this. It's always a little more screwed up than we remember, right? The story of Ebenezer Scrooge learning from his past to see his present differently to change his incredibly grim future. Awfully high stakes for a Christmas movie. You don't often see animated works where the thing on the line is the protagonist's immortal soul. Where to start with this? It's one of the most ubiquitous and popular Christmas stories of all time. Even if you haven't seen it by itself, you've definitely seen it referenced elsewhere. It was referenced elsewhere earlier in these recommendations. So which better version to recommend than the most high-profile, biggest budget animated version? I see. The 2009 one by Disney, starring Jim Carrey as Scrooge. Excuse me while I try to think of nice things to say about this movie. Oh, I jest. While one might expect me to react like that due to this movie's reputation, in truth it actually has a lot more going for it than just Disney money. Some of it is quite memorably dark. Sometimes it's more uncanny than anything, but it tries for horror and does that to remarkable effect. In any case, I'd exercise caution before showing this one specifically to your family, and definitely keep this one away from the youngest of children. It can get scary, progressively more as it goes on. Much as it's probably not the version I'd recommend showing kids, it is the version that remembered that the horror story of Christmas is indeed a horror story. That's the thing. The notion that children need their innocence protected isn't nearly as old as animation itself, which is why older animation tends to be a lot darker. So anything from this century with the wherewithal to be a bit more grim is something I'm willing to celebrate on principle alone. Whether or not it panned out in this case depends on who you ask. This movie has a pretty all-over-the-place reputation nowadays, entirely due to the visuals. Yeah, this movie's just a little too in love with its own technology at times, and while that can occasionally be to its benefit, it means the film is kind of all over the place in the visual department. Remember, this was when motion capture acting was big, you know, before Mars Needs Mom ruined everything, which may or may not have been a good thing. Plus, it's a 3D movie, intended to be viewed with 3D glasses and whatnot. And what's this? What's this? It's made in 2009. Some parts still look spectacular, some parts just look fundamentally wrong in an unintentional sort of way. I'll admit to being of two minds about Jim Carrey's performance, but I don't really have time to get into that. I also don't have time to watch every single animated version of A Christmas Carol, so I can't possibly compare how this one holds up compared to others, especially since other video essayists have already done that. But of the mocap Christmas movies I know of, I'd rather talk about it than The Polar Express. So take that statement for what it is, even if it's so qualified it could be a particle physicist. A lot of this is subjective, but it is still one of the most unique adaptations of A Christmas Carol. So if you think you can stomach the occasionally uncanny animation and are in a mood for a slightly darker version of A Christmas Carol, then I'd say this one will do you nicely. Just feels weird recommending this one over others. So thank God Disney also made Mickey's Christmas Carol. Probably should have started with that one. But if you're really asking me to recommend a film adaptation of A Christmas Carol, then those that know me personally would already know which version I'd recommend. First and foremost, it starts with M and rhymes with Fuppets. And I've already spent enough time restating the obvious that I don't need to recommend another one. Let's move on, shall we? One of the benefits of leaving this episode unfinished for a year is that I could keep adding to it over 2025. And talk about a recommendation changing in retrospect. When I put Merry Little Batman on here, I was gonna talk about how it was a fun, wholesome little romp with a storybook animation style as Batman and his son Damian fight crime around Christmas. I quite enjoyed this. It's fun. But then Amazon announced the Bat Fam show they were gonna spin off from it, and I don't think enough people knew about Merry Little Batman to justify that. I don't know. I'm all for comic adaptations doing weird and fun stuff, but a Bat Family show is still the most high demand thing from DC I've seen online, and the fact that we got this before that is gonna drive someone to murder. Nevertheless, that doesn't change my overall feelings on the original special. Merry Little Batman feels so disconnected from anything else Batman that it winds up just being its own charming little thing that I still recommend. I'm also surprised the special was allowed to feature a version of Damian so different from the comic book one, because Damian Wayne was introduced in that recent era of comic book media where if you veered 2 inches from the style guide and changed so much as a character's inseam measurement, your writers wouldn't be allowed to eat. Moving right along, let's take a look at Arthur Christmas. Yeah, not Arthur the Aardvark. I've clarified that so many times. It took me a bit to get it too. Like Father Christmas, the British name for Santa, but the main character is named Arthur, just like the British to name their movie after a pun no one besides them would get. But I can forgive that because this isn't just the British, it's Aardman. What's that, you ask? One of the most underrated animation studios nobody in the US seems to remember. You know Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run? That was Aardman. And they released this gem in 2011, courtesy of Sony. You'd be forgiven for not realizing this was the Wallace and Gromit guys, what with it being CG instead of stop motion, but trust me, once you see it, then it's obvious. The movie follows Arthur, youngest son of Santa, right on Christmas Eve, when it turns out that Santa and his elves missed a single gift. With only 2 hours to spare till Christmas morning, Arthur and his grandpa, Grand Santa, take the old sleigh to make the drop before sunrise. Very simple premise, and just about everything goes wrong. The biggest strength of the movie is the character writing, and a lot of that comes from Grand Santa. The movie quite convincingly replicates the feel of being on a long car ride with Grandpa. You just care about where you're going, but Grandpa is driving, and the guy occasionally goes on these long tangents and says these wildly off-the-cuff things that he probably shouldn't, but you don't care because you don't understand. Grand Santa is wildly funny due to that. The movie sometimes busts out a joke that no kid would get and parents wouldn't care because it catches them so off guard. Just in case you need a reminder that this is the Wallace and Gromit people. The character writing really goes the distance. Grand Santa is a really well-rounded character, endearing and funny, plus a surprisingly sentimental guy on top of that. Arthur's brother Steve, also an amazing character, but I don't have time, just take my word for it. And Arthur himself is an incredibly charming protagonist. James McAvoy's performance does wonders for him. The stakes of the movie is literally just a child's sense of wonder, and Arthur's concern makes it feel like the end of the world. Though he has the least to do, Santa himself is also quite well written, with an arc that tugs at the heartstrings, despite limited screen time. The only Claus who's kinda underserved is Mrs. Claus, but it wouldn't make much sense for her to be absent, and she is the sensible one, so I see no issue with her. Arthur Christmas is wildly creative with some great humor and animation to boot. I realize this was CG because of practicality, but considering being stop motion would have made it even more of a logical successor to classic Christmas movies like the Rankin and Bass ones, I wonder what it would have been like if it were made of clay. You know, a man can dream. But changing the subject for just a second, the sequences of the elves delivering presents were quite entertaining. I can't find it, but I swear for the life of me, I saw a comment on YouTube saying, I wish there was a movie with just the elves delivering presents, and that made a familiar bell jingle in my head, because that exists. It was called Prep and Landing. Anyone remember these? Prep and Landing was a made-for-TV movie that aired on ABC in 2009. Since Santa's job is so hard, he has the elves go ahead of him, fill the stockings and such before he drops off the gifts. A lot like what Arthur Christmas would later do, but greatly expanded upon. We follow experienced elf Wayne, who's saddled with rookie Lanny, as they go on what starts as a normal impossible mission, until the biggest snowstorm of the season prevents Santa from dropping off presents at the house they prep, potentially leaving Wayne and Lanny stranded and a family without presents. Again, this is like if Arthur Christmas got to be a little more creative with the elves. It's only a half hour, much shorter, but it's a fun little snack of Christmas viewing, and if you're really curious, it spawned a sequel, a 7-minute short titled Secret Santa, and even this year, there's a new sequel out. These are fun little romps, not nearly as substantial as full movies I've covered, but still worth a watch if you're curious. And with that, we're moving on to the last Christmas movie recommendation of the episode, and that honor goes to Netflix original animated movie, Klaus. I know a lot of people have talked about this one. I seem to remember it being a minor phenomenon when it came out. I definitely saw some Klaus branded products at my local ShopRite the year it was released, so they tried to hype this up as best as they could. Yeah, and by all the Triscuits in the world, were they kind of right to be confident in this one? Klaus is the story of the mail, how we all started writing letters to Santa, back when everyone trusted the postal service and I didn't have to wait an extra 2 weeks for an eBay order. Sorry, that was brewing for like a year, I had to put that in there. It follows Jesper Johansson, spoiled son of Postmaster General, a man who's not happy with his son being undisciplined and decides to fix things by sending Jesper to an island town called Smearensburg. It's just about the most remote, drab, cold, hostile, unhappy location on the planet, and Jesper's gotta deliver 6,000 letters in a year or risk being cut off. Already a high bar, but everyone in Smearensburg hates each other, so nobody really sends mail, leaving Jesper kaput. In his time on the island, Jesper befriends an old woodsman, the titular Klaus, and delivers an old toy from Klaus to a kid in the town. So Jesper gets the idea to bulk up the number of letters he delivers by telling the other kids on the island that they too can get toys if they write a letter to Klaus. We see his operation grow, spiral even, and Jesper and Klaus inadvertently inspire virtually everything we know about Santa Claus in the process. There's more to the movie than that, obviously. Very endearing side characters, some villains who'd rather see the kids of the town hate each other, and also a ferryman who's voiced by the late legend Norm Macdonald, in one of the last film roles he ever had. Oh, and Klaus is voiced by J.K. Simmons, meaning yes, the voice actor of Omni-Man and J. Jonah Jameson voiced Santa Claus. This might be my favorite role of his, actually. That's right, the yellow M&M has been dethroned. But there's more to the film's character than just characters, as it packs an inspiring message about altruism, which lands entirely because Jesper is such a believable and likable jerk protagonist, while we see the good he's inspired around him. It's a very palpable process the film shows us. Klaus himself is also a surprisingly layered character in ways I hesitate to spoil. Alva's a delight, Mogan's as great as to be expected, and Margot is legitimately the cure to modern cynicism. So yeah, the character writing is stellar. That's not the main attraction here. That'd be the presentation, by which I mean movie pretty. You wouldn't believe how good the animation of this movie is, making 3D animation look like it was 2D. And you shouldn't believe that because I lied. This isn't 3D animation, it's 2D. Hand-drawn, two-dimensional animation, like classic Disney movies, just done so well that the characters legit look like CG most of the time, with more depth than pretty much any classical offering. And the backgrounds! These could pass for museum pieces. Surprised to see a movie from the 2020s still using 2D animation, considering Disney and DreamWorks abandoned the medium by the side of the road. It does wonders for Klaus. Another thing that drew me to this was the surprisingly dark tone. This ain't for small children, let me tell you. Alva threatens Jesper with a knife. Klaus's introduction was actually quite harrowing, and large chunks of the film take place at night. This is a very blue film, and multiple lives are threatened during it, which makes me laugh. If it weren't for the opening spiel about letters to Santa, I'd have forgotten that this was a Christmas movie at all, and that's not a bad thing. If I had any actual criticisms, it'd be that I think some of the music is a little out of place. Not all of it, the score is phenomenal, but the occasional more modern pop songs kinda clash with the film in some places, but it's worth it just because the song that plays after Jesper puts this little jerk in his place is so perfectly timed. There's no way they did that by accident. Plus, this is, by definition, a liar revealed story, and if you already dislike that kind of story, this movie won't make you love it. Honestly though, what criticisms I have of the film don't matter. Because of all the ones I've talked about, it's probably the Christmas film that most deserves to be seen because it's a genuine work of art. A remarkably touching, gorgeously animated film that will always deserve more praise than it gets because it's just that good. You won't regret watching this one. And that just about covers it for a recommended animated family viewing for the holiday season. You'll all get nothing but well wishes from me, except for the one person who got a pipe bomb. I'm writing this back in the last holiday season, so now you have to do it or this joke won't be as funny, future David. Joke's on him. If there's anyone I can disappoint, it's myself. It's been a pleasure making this, and I hope I've helped at least one person stumble on a animated soon-to-be holiday classic. Tune in to other episodes of Cartoon Gateway for more cartoon discussion, or maybe more little-known facts about me, such as, when I was in elementary school, I actually got in trouble for asking what they were jingling all the way to. Public school, am I right? That seems like a reasonable question for a child to ask. Where are they going? A football game? The Capitol? Ridiculous. Now, if I had asked what those 8 maids were milking, that I can understand a talk from a counselor from. They gone? They gone yet? The kiddos? The children? Those that shouldn't be exposed to more adult-oriented viewing? Right, good to hear. Parents and parent-aged adults that are disappointing somebody, it's time to give a few non-kid related holiday specials to brighten the season a little bit more for my jaded audience. Don't worry, I'll keep things brief. There's not nearly as many for this section. First off, a show that has consistently good holiday specials regardless of the occasion, Bob's Burgers. I know, not everyone's cup of tea, but not everyone's British, so cups of tea aren't for everyone on principle. Some of us drink ginger ale, thank you. Who would have thought a show that's the virtual pinnacle of family wholesomeness lends itself really well to holiday specials, particularly those of Christmas time? There's a lot of really good Christmas episodes in this show, but if I had to pick one, season 13's The Plight Before Christmas seems to be the fan favorite, and I can't really disagree. It's a classic family with multiple kids is double booked on the holiday story, and it stands out in my mind as impressively wholesome. Do you know how hard you have to try to stand out in the field of wholesomeness compared to other Bob's Burgers episodes? That's like being the most concerning person at an AA meeting. But on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, if you hate Bob's Burgers for some no doubt sane reason, then you'll probably like Solar Opposites. I really would love to talk about this show at length, and I think I have an episode lined up to talk about it, unless another episode of mine gets canceled. I'm not gonna waste time explaining the show, but if you like the series' brand of pop culture references and cynicism, I have the episode for you. A very Solar Holiday Opposites episode. That is the last time I read that title in full. The Solar Opposites decide to get into the holiday spirit through movies, and as such, teleport themselves into the holiday classic to some, Jingle All the Way, a movie they absolutely can't stand and skip out on. But apparently doing so took all their holiday spirit from them, so they have to go back into the movie to somehow finish the plot and get their Christmas spirit back. That's about all I'm gonna spoil. I know, Solar Opposites ain't exactly for everyone. Again, tea. But fans of the show would definitely get a kick out of this episode. It's got a lot of the show's strengths on display, what with irreverent references, and doesn't have too many things to nitpick that I couldn't say about the entire show. Plus, one might call it a palate cleanser. And while the Solar Opposites can't stand Jingle All the Way, I absolutely do not recommend 8 Crazy Nights, the one Hanukkah movie I could find, and it's an Adam Sandler comedy. Was this movie anyone's decision? Has anyone ever sat down and willingly watched this knowing what it is? Cynical, uncomfortably crass, not a good representation of the holiday, annoying characters, and way too well animated for what it is. I'm sorry so many Jewish families are stuck with this as their only Hanukkah movie. But to cap things off, let's end with a series that has some of the best holiday specials across the board, American Dad. You can find entire video essays about the absurd lengths this show's Christmas episodes go to. I've talked a bit before about Rapture's Delight, but there's also a time travel misadventure in which America falls to Soviet Russia, the Smith family covering up the murder of Santa, a musical all about Krampus, and more. These things are all super fun, but they do suffer a bit from being a series. Yeah, there's continuity. There is an intended order to these things, so I'm not sure I can say you can just go nuts by jumping into these. If I had to pick one to recommend first, it'd probably be Yuletide Repeat. Stan's efforts to have the perfect Norman Rockwell Christmas gets Haley, Steve, and Francine killed in a mall explosion. But Stan gets stuck in a time loop to save their lives, and the lengths this one goes to are just incredible. It alternates perfectly between the usual American Dad style humor and some legitimately harrowing imagery. Yeah, I know, some of this is just Final Destination references. Doesn't change the fact that it's well executed, much like the mall goers. Watch any of them. But if I had to recommend one on its own, Yuletide Repeat. I truly wonder if anyone gets that movie, it's referencing Live, Die, Repeat, a movie that didn't even release under that title. This is not part of the episode, this is just me rambling. And that caps off my holiday presentation. Spend time with your loved ones, have a time, or maybe watch this episode again. I'm sure SCM could use the revenue. Remember, no matter if you believe in celebrating Christmas for Jesus, or if you think it's about just corporate commercialism, no matter what, Christmas is always about making a little profit. We need money. Best wishes to everyone this holiday. Hope the year treats you right. Happy holidays to all, and to all a good night.
For over 40 years, SCM
has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
it's about empowering our community.
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue.
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive.
for generations to come.
Visit our website.
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
Counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media.
where your town
Your schools and
and your government
Come together.